the hardest part of breaking cycles is?
How lonely it can feel. You become the black sheep. You become the person that is uncovering all the secrets that everybody managed to keep hidden.
Born in 92 on the block with the Sharks. Come from a different cloth, y'all would get ripped apart. You want it diamond, then you gotta get it in the dark. We dropping nuggets like Carmelo went to Rucker Park. Now we eating from state to state, we scrape the plate. I put my eggs in a basket, took a leap of faith. I took a chance, now we grow and see the impact. Decoding success with special guests, now let's bring Matt.
Dr. Mariel, what are we getting wrong about healing?
Ooh, we're starting with a good one.
Trying to.
Yeah, it's good. About healing, my goodness. The main thing I would say is that we believe that healing means an arrival at some destination.
Mm.
It really does not. For any of us, for any human on this planet, healing is really just a series of events where we have micro victories. We have these like moments when we can feel more settled than the last moment, the last year, the last decade. And we can, just see difference in ourselves. And unfortunately for us, we have not really been trained to actually sit in those small moments where we can say, wow, something feels different, or I'm actually responding differently to the very same environment that I have been in. And that's something. There's something in the air. There's something that I've done that actually reflects that healing has happened. I would say for sure that, because when we think about healing as being a destination, what tends to happen is that we might set ourselves up for shame. We set ourselves up for feeling like we haven't arrived soon enough to that place, that miraculous place where we no longer feel pain, where we no longer, feel some experience around stress. And that, I think, is probably one of the biggest misconceptions that we've had about healing.
This is going to be such an unconventional question, but it's coming up from what you're sharing, from experience as well. When we go through like levels of inner work, whether it's talk therapy or whatever the modality is, and we actually start to see our evolution. I'm not going to call it an improvement, but an evolution where maybe how we respond to a trigger is different or whatever it may be. When we get to a particular point, should we, maybe not consciously, but start to seek out things that might trigger us as a test? Like, is that something we should start to seek out, or just let it happen naturally?
Well, for most people that have lived with triggers, they're actually psychologically, because we are manufactured as humans to avoid pain, we're actually not going to consciously seek out the trigger.
Right? Yeah.
And we're actually going to go into the psychological defense of avoidance. Aim to distance ourselves as much as possible from a trigger. Quite frankly, I think that's why we have this, I don't know if you've seen it, which is, I think it's kind of everywhere. So you probably have, and you probably, have had your own analysis around this, but we've had like some sort of a phenomenon where people are distancing themselves even from other people very, very like drastically by going no contact. Sometimes that is very necessary, but just completely distancing themselves from people and environments that can actually cause them a trigger. And what that does for us, in part, is that it doesn't allow us to have the opportunity to experience even low-level exposure to what the trigger is, so that we can learn how to work through it. So what you're saying, my answer is yes. I do believe that we need to have micro exposures to the things that make us feel unwell so that we can train our minds to actually reconcile with the trigger. However, naturally as humans, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
If we want to do it consciously, then the way that I would do it with someone that I want to care for in the best way is that I would first train them how to actually work through their emotions in a way that helps them to feel settled and like they have some level of mastery over not over the emotion, but like they have mastery around the coping mechanism to help them come back from the trigger. And then we can actually venture into trigger land, if you may,
Yeah.
in a really, really low level way that doesn't actually disrupt them emotionally too much until we reach mastery of, okay, I can go to that aunt's house that's always saying something disruptive and really kind of out there, right? Like now I can go there and not feel like my whole entire being is flooding with anger.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
got that. Now we've reached that level. Now let's go into, the holiday dinner where now you have the 3 aunts that are, very inflammatory,
Yeah.
right? And like now, I can actually tolerate holiday dinners. Okay, so we've
Right.
got another level, right? But it really requires that we build mastery at each of the levels of where that trigger lies and not just kind of go willy-nilly like into like, trigger land without having explicit tools to help us cope and deal with it.
Understood. I guess my intention for that question is like, if you're an ambitious person and knowing that really the journey of healing never ends and, it's like a constant evolution, a constant stepping into this. Like if you're an ambitious person, you want more. And I know from my experience, like I've hit points where I feel like I've hit like a plateau or an equilibrium where it's like, well, what's the next thing? So that's where that question came from, right? It's like, obviously we're grasping the concept here of, yes, like it's a constant journey. But like, if you feel like you hit the moment of like, okay, I got to a level, but I'm just on that level now, I want to get to the next. What would you say to that person?
Well, to pace themselves.
Okay.
Because ambitious people really like, or let's say can appreciate expedited progress.
Yes.
And part of what that is for us, to use a psychological term, in part, it has to do with not being able to tolerate the moment when you're in transition, the moment when your success isn't quite there. And so we have to train ourselves to sit in the unknown, to sit in the pause, to sit in the moments when we're about to reach that successful level, that micro victory. We have to train our minds to really sit in that. That also is a part of mastery. We have to master the art, if you may, or the psychological art of sitting in the in-between space.
You just spoke to me so loudly. I'm literally sitting here saying it's the in-between. Why is the in-between uncomfortable? Like, is it because there's a lack of excitement? Like, just what do you feel like it is?
Well, it's, I think, a lack of training. We're not trained in society to sit in the in-between.
Okay, so it's
Have
the
you
training.
ever heard of, or when you were in school, did anyone like,
I wish.
you had to master algebra?
Yeah.
Like you're not
Good old
using
algebra.
that- you're not using that very much, I'm sure, right? None of us are, right? But and this is why, like, I desire, hopefully in my lifetime and in yours, that we could see changes in curriculum where we can even like see the younger minds that are coming up now being trained around this experience of languishing, as they call it, right? Like just like kind of just sitting in that space where you're like almost kind of not doing very much. You're like kind of just in the limbo state, right? That's a big part of life.
Yeah.
We've all had those moments. We've had those moments in relationships, right? We've had those moments in our businesses. We've had those moments, some of us, when it comes to our health, waiting for the treatment to actually complete itself and for us to be healthy again. There's so many variations of sitting in that limbo state, and yet no one's taught us how to sit in there. No one's taught us how to do it in a way that is healthy and isn't rushed and isn't driving us into the psychological defensive avoidance and, speeding up the process so that we don't have to tolerate the distress of just sitting in the in-between. None of that is taught. And it's such a disservice to humanity that we don't have those lessons.
Yeah. How would you embrace the in-between? Like, what would you say to someone that's in that particular position? Like, what does that look like?
It's a great question. It looks like so many things, but for most people, it looks like and feels like restlessness. I
Okay.
think that that's the prominent emotion, right? Because there can be so many variations of scenarios, but there aren't a lot of variations of emotion. Emotions tend to be very commonplace. And, for people that have a default that is maybe a little bit more harmful, they may default to like emotions like guilt and shame, right? Some of us just have histories where those are prominent emotions that were embedded in us. And that would be the go-to versus restlessness. Restlessness would be, this needs to happen. I can't wait. Like, when is it going to happen? Like, am I going to make the, 6-figure mark in my business this year? And like, I have to do everything in my power to do that. And shame, says like, I'm just such a failure. Like, I can't achieve anything. Look how long it's taking me to actually get to this 6-figure mark. And so it's a very different way that we, kind of like go about the process of like sitting in the in-between. And so I say that because I would probably say something different to both parties, right? For someone who's more of the restless person, I would actually ask them to really just settle into themselves by doing deep breathing, by understanding and affirming themselves around the fact that the end result will come. It may not come when you expect it to, because that expectation is likely a false sense of control. But it can and will come if they continue along the journey with the steps that they're taking. With a person that's more shame-based, I would actually do a little bit of a deeper dive.
Okay.
I would actually want to know, what are the roots of this shame? Because without exploring the roots, without potentially looking into the possibility that this person, while they were growing up, maybe had a parental figure or someone in their community that made them feel lesser than in whatever way, or maybe they had a trauma that actually then manifested into the internalization of shame, and that such a default emotion for them. We need to go there, because if we don't actually excavate what was at the root, we're kind of doing a little bit of a patchwork.
Yeah.
And so I would actually be going into a deeper dive rather than helping to affirm a person and helping them feel like, listen, we're getting to that end result. We just have to sit more intentionally, calmly, and mindfully, and breathe through the experience of getting there. The person that is more shame-based, we would have to work through the elements of shame, how they show up in their lives, reducing that shame, and then getting them to realize and recognize that they're not broken, and that life circumstances that may feel like failures or may feel like they're taking too long don't necessarily mean that they are a bad person or a person that is inadequate, lacks worth. But we just see them in the context that they are. It's a period of time that's going to take long to get to the point of success, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the person that is navigating that journey is unsuccessful or unworthy or lesser than.
Yeah. I'm asking this question out of pure curiosity and no assumption, but it sounds like from what you're sharing here, shame is something that's cast upon you versus like anything else. Is that accurate?
Shame, more often than not, is a reflection of a wound that happens at some point in our lives. Restlessness, as I see it, is faulty socialization that we have in our society, and our society's inability to train young minds that then become adult minds to sit in the unknown.
Yeah, understood. I heard something. I'm gonna ask you if this has changed in your life just from doing my research. I heard you say that one of the areas that you personally that you received feedback on was you could have been more patient. Has that improved for you?
Yes. And
I feel like you said that like a year ago on a show, on a podcast.
I did. And in part that was, I learned patience in great part by being an aunt.
Ah,
My sister, in her ways and in her parenting ways, really taught me the art of patience. Just by, I remember like there were times with my nephew, I would actually even like be picking him up from school, and if I walked on the way home, I would be walking super fast. I also attribute that to my time, my years of being
a New
in
Yorker.
New York.
I was gonna say.
There's a case here that
Oh yeah.
it really, whenever you go anywhere else in the world, it feels like it's a little bit extreme, and it definitely,
Yeah.
we carry it with us everywhere. So I really had to learn that in order to allow myself, also in order to honor that there's this little human that, has a different pace than me, that I had to like step out of myself and really kind of embody a bit more patience versus like, holding his hand and walking like super quickly to the house in a way that it was like, very unsettling for him.
Yeah.
The patience has been something that, because I really struggle with restlessness and have much more in the past, it has been an area that I've had to focus on very intentionally. I have had to engage in the beautiful practice of mindfulness. And this year, actually, since that time, it was like a year and a half ago, but since that time, I've actually done more things to embody patience, including one thing that I do with my family as of this year, which is something that I wanted to do because however long I could have like 50 more years on this planet. But if I were to look back to my 40th year, which I'm in, I would want to look back at it and think, I spent time with those that I loved, and I didn't rush them through the process. My parents are Latinos, or, they tell very long story. Latinx folk will, if they're telling you a story about this beautiful green chair that we're on, they're going to start from the first leaf that ever burgeoned on this earth and start telling you about the properties of that leaf, and then follow that through millions and millions of years down to this chair. And you have to sit there, right, with like the greatest amount of patience, just waiting for the point to be made.
Yeah.
And my parents are very much like that. I remember feeling very like restless and wanting to rush them through a story. Like, what are you trying to tell me? Can we please get to the point?
Yeah.
And now I just allow them to take me through the story. And actually, I've uncovered a lot of gems that they've told me as a result. There's so many little nuggets of wisdom that they have that.
Are you going to share them with us?
Yeah, one of the nuggets of wisdom that my mother shared with me, which I actually placed as a quote inside of my book, Break the Cycle, it was, I remember she was telling a story, and then she said this thing in Spanish, hijo de tigre nace con rayas, which means like, the cubs of tigers are born with their stripes, which is basically saying, we emulate our parents, we become them, we and so it was like a very like multi-generational, transgenerational kind of like message and idiom that I didn't even know existed in my own culture. And I was like, that's brilliant. And that burgeons from me just sitting patiently, listening to my mother's story. And I didn't know that she carried this little nugget in there that I then carried with me and actually placed in a book. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. So that all kind of really, that surfaced prior to this year. But one of the things that I also do now is I actually became reacquainted with my first love, and we're actually now engaged. And
Congratulations! That is amazing.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful year in that regard, and because we have not been together in 16 years,
yeah.
Now what I do is every time that he hugs me, I just close my eyes so that I can fully take it in.
I love that.
Instead of
just gave me the chills.
Oh,
you just gave me the chills.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
Instead of like hug, okay, like I close my eyes, I take it in. I let the hug be as long as it needs to be. To typical me would just like hug, pat, keep it moving and not really take in the moment. And I try to be patient with however long he desires a hug. I extend that to the rest of my family because I realize like, wow, I'm 50 years from now, I'm going to be able to say, I sat in the love that was being offered to me. And so these are like all these little things that all kind of circle back to patience.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be really intentional about kind of placing in my life.
I love that. This is, again, just listening to you, I'm curious, does taking away senses, for example, you're saying that you close your eyes and obviously you could still feel, you could still touch. Does taking away senses help us come back into the present moment, or like shutting off some senses and like really getting into one particular sense?
Well, we got to think about, especially we're in 2025. This is an era of hyperstimulation and hypersensory experience.
Yeah.
Like we're always experiencing noises and sounds, and all of our senses are kind of being stimulated all at once. So yeah, what we know, at least from what I have read and research that I haven't, been like fully, immersed in because it isn't my area of expertise, but it does interest me a lot, is that, when we shut out one sense, another sense becomes more heightened.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I do believe that there is, especially in this day and age, a need for us to do active shutting down of hyperstimulation around us and hypersensory experiences in order to be able to be more present-centered, more focused. So I did that intuitively, but it does actually help me to really kind of cement the experience. Like,
Yeah.
I can remember what it feels like to be hugged by the person that I love because I am taking in that moment so explicitly. And however that may be manifesting in my brain, like however my brain is like rewiring or wiring to really kind of take in that experience from a sensory perspective, I'm like, great, because it is then allowing that to go into my long-term memory. And in a moment when I'm explaining those experiences to you now, it feels very palpable and vivid for me.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it was just random, like hearing you say that. I've done like sensory deprivation before in like a float tank.
Oh, yes. I love those.
And that will challenge a restless person.
Yes, it will.
That will challenge one.
Yep.
But I think one of the most beautiful things is like, yes, turning down your senses in like that tank and in that moment, really connecting with water, in another word, nature, right? Like just like being there. I've never heard my thoughts louder. And I think that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm a restless person too, which is why I actually the question about patience, because I know that I lack patience. But hearing your stories about the walks home from school made me think about it every time I take my dog for a walk.
Yeah.
And this little guy just wants to sniff everything. That's training my patience muscle.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I share that with you. I have two little fur balls, and
Oh, so you get it.
yeah,
You get it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Sometimes I wonder, with them, like there's a level of excitement that they have. And I used to it used to be like, go out so that you don't go inside the house and then just come back in and then your walk is done. And then I started understanding, this is something that's really important to them. It nourishes their brain. They feel, there's so much about their experience as a dog that really centralizes around them sniffing everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm taking away that experience. Just like with my nephew, I'm taking away the experience of him pacing himself on his way home and telling me about how school went and all those moments that are so incredibly essential, which, I know we're busy people, right? The world really kind of socializes us and really trains us to be not patient, right? And so what we're doing is kind of fighting against also what the world is telling us to do and be at all times. And if we want to be successful, then we got to walk the dog very quickly because we have to get back into our computer and make sure that we're doing the next thing to achieve the next thing. And It's a really rough socialization that we're fighting against each and every day. And I still feel a little bit of that, kind of push to do a little bit more of the rushing, or to work until, 10, 11 at night. And what I'm realizing, especially now as I hit 40, is that that's really taking away from everything that I work towards. I've worked towards having freedom. Like, this is why I work so hard. It's so that I could have those moments when, at home we have a bazillion birds. I never knew I would be so fascinated with birds. They're so stunning. Especially, I don't know if you know what sandhill cranes are.
I don't.
Oh my goodness.
I know what a crane is.
Yeah, well, it's probably what you imagine.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and they have just a little red hat on their head. And it's just like watching those gorgeous creatures and just anything that, nature offers us. Those are moments that my very, very busy, fully immersed in my world and trying to achieve self would not have taken a moment to pause and see how beautifully this bird walks, how tall it is, almost as high, my height, just stunning. And really kind of its sounds and all these things that are like what we miss when
That's it.
Yeah.
We miss things.
Miss them. And it's like 50 years from now, do I want to say I missed them? Or do I say I took the moment and I want to take the moment? So it's an ever evolving process. That's why the healing piece is never an arrival. Healing for me this year looks like taking in the love differently. It looks like watching birds. It looks like, actually being on the beach and not being on my phone. Sometimes not even reading a book, which is my go-to when I'm on the beach. Like, I love to just open up an actual book. But what I did last time that I went to the beach is that I just stared at the water for hours and I managed to catch a turtle, some dolphins.
That's awesome.
And I would have missed all of that if I would have had like my head plastered in it.
Yeah. You just gave me a mind blown moment. Talking about the whole topic of like, we miss things. I'm sitting here saying to myself, Matt, how many times have you tried to get to the next thing to get a thing, but along the way, you're missing all of the things? That's a lot of things. But right, like, do you get where I'm going with that?
Exactly what you mean.
I'm just sitting here like, holy shit, excuse my language. Like, just, whoa. I never really put two and two together like that.
The thing about that is that my hope is that, and I'm saying this as a fellow human, of course, right? And I'm not being prescriptive. It's just like, this is what has happened to me. My hope is that you don't miss the joy that's in those moments when you can actually acknowledge the things that, the joy that is in the moments when you're being able to like really focus on the things that are there, that are like the unseen, but also the joy in the moments when it comes to healing, the micro victories, because we just go into the next thing, next therapy session, the next, we go from therapy to coaching, and it's like we just kind of go and bounce into the next thing and work in a way that is like a very autopilot around our healing.
Yeah.
But we don't sit in the micro victories. And we have to think about also that person that defaults to shame. You know what the part of the antidote to shame is? It's a sense of pride. Pride and self-worth. Pride, like, I did that. I helped myself. And if we're not pausing in those micro victories to say, look at me. Like, I can't believe I'm this human now. That's wild. If we're not taking those moments, then we're not actually cementing that antidote, that cure to the shame that's been there for a long time. We're not really kind of taking in the fullness of what that healing can do in that moment, because we're just moving into the next thing.
I did something that I don't do often this morning. I looked in the mirror and literally just looked at myself and told myself how proud I was. And here, like, this is just so reaffirming because you did not know that I did that until like it's wild. I've had Mel Robbins on the show, and Mel shared like the whole high five habit type of thing. But before I high fived myself, like I looked myself in the eye, and I literally said to myself after, as I walked back into my kitchen, I'm like, dude, when have you ever done that? Like, literally never. And I think just sharing what you're sharing and like letting yourself know that you're proud. I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was in a very different place in life, right? And hearing what you're saying, it's almost like, yeah, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. I need to do more of that.
Yeah, we all do. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we are. I know I'm speaking in some generalities, and it's partly because, of course, everything has nuance, right?
Sure.
But we are a society that has also sought out external validation a lot more than maybe what we should. In psychology, there's a concept that really kind of speaks to that, which is external locus of control. And I kind of like the framing because what it basically means is that you're relying upon external factors to actually help you to feel well, or external factors have a great impact upon your everyday well-being versus an internal locus of control, which is you having that, you know, you're kind of in the driver's seat more. And so that high five method, I loved when Mel did that because, you know, a lot of that means that, you know, anything like that, affirmations, the high five method, speaking to oneself, writing down, you know, just all the lovely things that you are and have done, sitting in the micro victories, all of that is, you know, in the category of internal locus.
Yeah.
It's you giving yourself that affirmation, that validation, so that you can tell yourself how wonderful you are doing and have been doing versus waiting for the next person. People that have histories, especially in childhood, of, I'll give one example, like histories of like,
Hey everyone, pausing this episode to share something with you. In a world of hyper competitiveness, I think the best quote that I can share with you is that there is no one in the world youer than you, and that is truer than true, which is exactly why I wanted to share with you today about Brand Builders Group. It's an organization I've been working with over the last few months. It is absolutely incredible, and today I am sharing with you the opportunity to hop on a free brand call with a brand strategist to help you break through the wall of obscurity. We are in a hyper competitive space at the moment, whether it be on social or with your podcast or with your blog or with your books or getting on stage. No matter what your endeavor is, this is an opportunity for you to hop on a free strategy call with someone from the team to be able to help you navigate the waters of making sure that you are breaking through the wall and taking advantage of all of the opportunities that you most definitely deserve. Again, there is no one in the world youer than you. So no matter what the problem is that you solve, there might be other people that are out there that also solve the same problem, but there is a strategy that can be placed into your initiatives that will help you break through that wall with speed. So I want to share this with you. It is freebrandcall.com/Matt Labrie. That is going to be in the show notes of this episode, whether you're tuned in from audio or through YouTube, whatever it is, freebrandcall.com/Matt Labrie.
never really achieving enough, like maybe having parents that only wanted those A's and to really struggle with internal locus. They're very externally preoccupied.
Yeah.
Because they're always waiting for someone to say, you did a good job, and it never comes because the parent is always waiting for the next thing for them to be so incredibly great. Sometimes kind of just because the parent really kind of sees a child as an extension of them, and that child must be great if they're an extension. Slightly. There's a little narcissism in there, you know, not like diagnostically like, you know, this person is a narcissist, but there is a little bit of it's called a narcissistic extension. Like we, the people that are connected to us must be this, you know,
Right.
whatever. But what that leaves a child with is this idea that they're never quite enough or they never achieve enough. And they're waiting for everybody around them, that boss or their partner, anyone to tell them, no, you look great. You may have like heard people say like, is this okay? Like they're just kind of waiting for the next
Yeah.
person to, no, the red is good. You look good in red. Oh, are you sure? I don't know. And it's like a lot of like uncertainty, unless someone comes in and validates them. And that's, when we rely too much upon that, and in an environment where it doesn't quite come as often as we need, that can lead us to have really low self-esteem.
It's This is a topic that I struggle with. I'm curious to know, like, external validation, I guess, is it ever not a bad thing? Meaning, like, if you were like, hey, Matt, you're a good podcaster, but I wasn't seeking for you to say that, like, is that a bad thing?
No, the thing about it is that with everything, we want balance.
Okay.
Right? So
Okay.
we want internal and external, but we don't want to over-rely upon or external, because, internal,
yeah.
if we go to the extreme of internal, there's some problems there too, right? I'm so
Okay, I never
great.
thought about that.
Everyone's
Yeah.
telling me I'm a crap, person, or I'm not a great gardener, but I'm like, I'm the best gardener in the world. I am, like, not quite, right?
Right,
You are
right.
also getting external feedback that you may have, some challenges that you probably should be working on. So on both ends, no extreme is good. What we want is balance.
I've never thought of it that way, which I love, because I have definitely been someone that has sought out external validation, right? Like constantly seeking the next achievement, getting the high fives and all of that, moving on to the next, right? Just constantly seeking that. But I've never thought about it from an internal perspective and being on that extreme.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, it's really essential for us to first be versed in the fact that we have these propensities within us. Also, the next step, obviously, is to really kind of like calculate a little bit of like where we fall in that equation. Like, am I someone that veers in the direction of external locus much more than what is healthy for me, right? Like we have to like really kind of like take inventory of our own propensities. And if it doesn't feel like a good equation, typically people that are like, I don't feel great, life doesn't feel great, they're the ones that are probably doing that self-analysis, right? And if you're willing and brave enough to do that self-analysis, the next part is to really kind of like take action, right? You're the person that now is engaging in that high five method because external locus has been so prominent in your life.
Yeah.
Then the action is to tilt it a bit more in the other direction so you can find your balance. And, folks that are on the internal side, like on the extreme side, may find a little bit of a tougher moment, like really kind of bringing themselves into external, but it still is a requisite for us to feel balance, because the reality is that someone that is, I'll speak to it from the perspective of how a person that is more extreme in the direction of internal may actually be emotionally in pain. That person may feel like no one is ever going to come and say, you did a good job, so I'm just going to do it myself all the time. And it's probably because no one ever did. Probably because that parent was like, was it an A? No? Then go back and do it better, right? And so the internalization is, well, no one's ever going to say, you did a great job, kid. So now I just have to say, well, you did a great job all the time. And so it's important to also understand there's always a psychology and always a set of emotions behind kind of every person's, way of being. And so what we want is for a person to really be mindful of their own ways. And then if their ways are leading to them not feeling so great about themselves, about their relationships, or about life in general, then we have to do some pivoting.
Is it common for people to jump from extreme to extreme? Because as you're sitting here, I'm literally like self-reflecting on this. Like if an individual has constantly sought out the external, realize that they're not getting it or enough of it, and then go to the extreme of internalizing it for themselves, like, is that a common trait?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's why I'm such a big fan of education, right? Like,
Mhm.
this is why I'm such a big fan of someone like yourself being willing to open up the conversation with someone like myself about this, so that someone like the listener can then be like, oh, well, that's something I should
Right.
probably look into, right? This is information, it's education, it's accessible. And we have people that can then do that self-assessment and
Mhm.
self-analysis and really not jump from one extreme to the other, because what we're doing is we're just switching psychological defenses. We're not, getting to the point of healing. We're just saying nobody's going to come and save me, and nobody's going to come and do right by me or affirm me or validate me. So screw them all. I'm just going to do it myself. That's not it. It doesn't, although it may feel like you now have control, it doesn't feel good internally and emotionally to the person. So they're not actually engaging in a process that's therapeutic or curative. They're instead just, figuring out another psychological defense to get through life.
Is it about control? I like that word that you used.
When pain is underneath it, when emotional pain is underneath it, more often than not.
That's so interesting.
Because when we're feeling, as an example, trauma, I talk about trauma a lot. When we're talking about trauma, we're also talking about experiences in life that have driven you to the point where you felt out of control. And your psychology is now so preoccupied on never letting that happen again. So you're going to control the variables around you. You're going to attempt to control your relationships so that you never get hurt in them again. You're going to attempt to control your social environments, everything becomes a matter of control in order to avoid having to experience that pain again. So when we're talking about an experience that feels emotionally fraught, yes, I would say the control, unconscious control. People are not trying to be controlling. They're unconsciously trying to control the variables around them to avoid pain.
That is so freaking good. Random question that I've asked a few times on the show. I feel like I have to ask it to you. Is everyone meant to heal? Not can everyone heal, but is everyone meant to in this lifetime? That might be a little bit of a spiritual question, but I'm curious, like what are your thoughts when you hear that?
Wow. Gosh, I gotta say, I really love that question, and you've stumped me, but in a good way. Meant to. I'm really kind of like focusing on that. I couldn't be a psychologist without believing that everyone should have at least the option. We're a very variable species, right? So some of us actually have brains that from birth are structured in ways where healing is not necessary, or healing is not, it's not possible, I would say. And some of the folks that I'm thinking about are probably people that have psychopathic tendencies that just have a different wiring.
Sure.
Do I want them to heal? Yes, because I don't want them to cause harm.
Of course,
right?
of course.
None of
yeah.
us do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that impacts all of us, right? Trauma happens when people do not care about the well-being of others and cause harm, right? And so, but would it be nice to have a world that would be willing to collectively heal? It would be, because we have a world that is deeply wounded, and that wounding is, I feel like, more pronounced now in 2025 because unfortunately we open up our phones and we see that our neighbor in, 10, let's say maybe like 5,000 miles away is hurting, and their entire community is hurting. And now we would have never known that thousands of years ago. Now we know it just by, with the first set of moments that we woke up. Now we know like somebody's hurting, like in the Congo, right? Like, and so we're a world that is like in so much pain that my hope even with writing my book was, to create a little bit of a movement, if you may, right, around like people being willing to take the hard step that is necessary in order to break cycles and heal. I do believe that we need balance in the world, and maybe that's why Disney, created the villains, and like we need a little bit of that, in order to like just create the balance. If we didn't have villains, we wouldn't have the good people and the heroes and everything, but I don't know. I like the fact that we are a variable world and that we have different personalities and different ways of being. I don't like the evil in the world, and I wish that we had less of that. And I do believe that if we had greater healing that happens earlier in life, or even before the healing even takes place, if we had preventative measures, meaning we had education in our education systems around mental well-being, that we would actually have less of the very extreme psychopathy that we tend to see in this world, in particular with people in positions of power.
Yeah. It's interesting when you have a conversation like this, and from my perspective, I'm sitting here and I can call myself out on how I'm only looking at one side of things sometimes. So like, for example, what you just said, like evil in the world, obviously we don't want it here, but without it, does the good exist? Or would we know it's good? And I never view it like that. There was a gentleman on the show, his name's Danny Morell, and he always talks about flipping the tortilla. There's two sides of the tortilla, the good and the bad or whatever. And if it's bad, you could flip it to good. Like it just exists that way. And I'm literally sitting here, I'm like, dude, you don't think like that often enough.
Yeah. And you know what, like to add a layer also to your question, because now I'm thinking about the meant to part. We're meant to heal, right? And so I'll give an example of like my own personal life, like my parents, right? My parents have been people that have gone through a host of things in their lives. And even up until the point when I was writing my book and like reflecting on what healing have they done and what healing have they not done that then got passed on to me, and what cycles did they not break that I then had to inherit, and all the things. And my parents, I'll speak to my mother specifically. My mother is such a different person than she was when I was growing up. My mother, when she was 40, drastically different from the human that's in front of me now. And I believe that she was meant to do some of the healing that is now basically has had her just show up to the world differently, the relationship with her daughters differently. But was she meant to do the abundant, enormous, profound healing that I would desire for my mom? Maybe not. My mom's 74, right? She's done what she's got to do, right? And, up until this point, she's survived and she's tried some things. Some things have stuck, some haven't. And yeah, she was meant to do a little bit of healing there, but maybe I was meant to do more of it, right? And I was meant to take the lessons from her and her, what she couldn't achieve or what wasn't available to her.
Yeah.
And I was meant to then take that and utilize it for my own healing that would be more profound, but also so that I can help others.
Yep. So that's exactly where that question stemmed from. I believe the first person I ever asked that to was Gabby Bernstein. And just thinking about it, like I've been in a relationship with an individual who I did not know was so hurt, and that was on me. But like you look at that and it's like, hey, if this person's hurt, like, are they actually meant to ever heal that hurt? Right. And I'm not the healer, right? Like I think that was one thing that I learned, but just overall, it's like, well, is this person ever meant to heal that hurt? Or are they just going to go through life bleeding onto other people or suppressing it or whatever it may be? And maybe that's their life. Maybe that's just their journey. And I always think about that question. I'm like, I've had so many unique perspectives. I think this is like the 5th time I've ever asked it in almost 400 episodes. But when it's right to ask, I drop it in there. And yeah, I'm just always curious, are we meant to heal? And I appreciate your perspective on that.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that question. That really threw me for a loop and had me thinking there, like in ways that I hadn't really kind of sat down with with the healing perspective, you know? And yeah, you know, as a psychologist, like anyone that comes through my office, it's a virtual office now, but my office, right? Like, I'm like, okay, we're going to get down to work. And yes, this person is meant to heal and they're going to get, you know, into that healing. But I also have been very humbled as a psychologist around a person's capacity and a person's motivation to heal, and the limitations of that that can be, you know, that can show up in the healing process, and the fact that I can only carry a person but so far in their journey. And if they don't have that capacity or motivation, then they will just remain at the level of healing that they were able to achieve, even if that was no healing at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because like if someone is showing up to a capacity, like they're like desire, somewhat motivation, just like there's a reason they show up. There's the people that never show up too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But I love what you shared though about your mom, because like I think about it from, you know, the parental perspective, and this ties into your work a lot. Like my father is from France. Like I think about it often. It's like, okay, I've never once had an emotional conversation with my dad. He's still here. It's not to say that it can't happen, but I don't know if it's going to, right? And that's a courage thing on my end as well. But I think about it, it's like, okay, like what has he gone through? Like coming here, like his father, his mother, so on and so forth. Like what have they brought that I'm still carrying?
Yeah.
Right? Like I think about that often, and it's like, I don't know what it was like to get on a boat and cross the waters and land on Ellis Island and do all of these things and try to make it with $0 in your pocket. Like I can't even imagine. I do pick up on, and you mentioned this earlier, like how we become our parents, how we also become our grandparents, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, I pick up on so many habits, and I'm like, wait, I do not like that. I don't like right? Like there's just so many things. So that leads me to ask you this, right? Like, how do we know if we are carrying someone else's pain?
Very often there's like an unsettledness in us. There's this, we may have reactions that we can't necessarily comprehend. And that tends to be kind of like that into knowing like something's up here. Whenever folks come to me, especially early on in my career, people would come to me and they would come with a very specific thing. I'm depressed for this reason. And when we started uncovering the layers, there was a lot that had happened way before them that had actually looked a lot like what they were going through. And they didn't really, you know, there wasn't like a direct experience or action or something that had actually happened that would have led to that depression, which is what led me a bit into being very inquisitive about, you know, what is it biologically that's happening here, right? Because it's like, what kind of like chemical, you know, differences are happening in this person's brain and this person's hormones that are also leading to these changes. And of course, uncovering that through, you know, my research and my work, now I realize, okay, we really have something to say about epigenetics, or things that are happening inside of the body that get transferred over, that are in essence kind of quote unquote not ours, but you know, now they are, right? Now you are the person that has, you know, a blunted cortisol response, or like, you know, cortisol response that is a reflective typically of PTSD that didn't necessarily, you know, get manufactured in your lifetime. It's just the remnants of what was passed down biologically to you, right? Like we know more and more of this, which is really helpful. But the way that it might show up in a person's day-to-day life interpersonally is that they may have a big response to something that may be a little bit more innocuous and harmless, like to someone else. And they, you know, typically tend to have a really tough time settling back from a big emotion, big explosion, angry outburst, things like that, right? And so that's, you know, those are kind of like those like day-to-day clues that are helping us to understand something's up. You don't really have like a full history of something that, you know, would have like punctured you so badly that now all of a sudden you're always angry. So let's look into this. Like, why is it that that response is so manufactured in you? And most importantly, of course, we have tools to help you through it.
Yeah.
But usually those are kind of like the clues that then lead us down the path of, oh, my parent, went to war, came back,
Yeah.
had, just a really, really tough time with PTSD. There was a drinking problem as a result. And in order to numb the pain and the all of the visuals and flashbacks of, everything that happened out there, right? Like we start really kind of digging into those past circumstances and realizing there's a whole lot of stuff that was there even prior to you even being born. And so like that's when we start understanding there's a generational thread here.
Yeah.
This isn't just that you had a really bad breakup 2 years ago and, you're still kind of in that grief stage and depressed. No, this is something that we have seen reflected in you since your early years, but aren't necessarily connected to a direct adversity that happened to you. They're connected to an adversity that happened before you.
Yeah. How do we get into I don't know if it's a mindset or something of the sort where it's like, I'm thinking of 2 R words, responsibility and resentment.
Okay.
And in a particular situation where something gets passed down onto us, how do we not resent the individual that may have passed something down to us? And how do we take responsibility for it? Because if it got passed to us, it's ours now.
Yes, 100%. The responsibility piece comes from, do you want the next 40 years of your life to look and feel the same way as the first 40? Right? If you want to look back and say, from this point forward, my life looked differently because I took accountability for my own pain, even though it didn't come from me and I made a change, then that's your answer, right? The resentment piece, I'm so glad you're asking that, because I feel like right now we have existed in a very recent generation, I would say, especially like people that are noticing patterns in their families and like realizing where they're coming from, where we're kind of doing a bit of the pointing of the finger. And unfortunately, that doesn't leave room for us to understand this very important nuance, which is the fact that a generation ago, even 5 years ago, our families didn't have language like trauma, like generational trauma. A lot of us even, I would say about 10 years ago, weren't even on social media saying, hey, there's this thing called depression. Would you like to know more about it?
Yeah.
I was in the generation of therapists that were like, almost kind of like the forerunners in that. Like we were out there like, oh, I hope that this doesn't get me in trouble with like, the institution that I'm affiliated with, that I'm in this social media place and like talking about depression, and I have to explicitly say this is in no way affiliated with, excuse me. This is in no way affiliated with my work at Columbia. This is me as a psychologist just speaking from what I know, right? Like there was a lot of like disclaimers we had to add, and we were like thinking, oh, we're going to get in trouble and like all this stuff, and all of that was a part of like the newness of it all, right? We were like, okay, we got to like educate the public, but how do we do it, right? And so there weren't a lot of people saying, listen, I am struggling with traumatic experiences, or, hey, I have ADHD. Like that language was not as prominent as it is today. So let's take all of that context and understand that a parent that went to war decades ago didn't have the understanding that PTSD was a real thing. They called it shell shock before it was PTSD, but they didn't even know that shell shock was a thing, right? They didn't even know that coming from a place where there was political unrest and they had to migrate, that political unrest would have stayed with them, and that they would have nightmares and flashbacks and would become irritable and maybe even violent. Like no one was actually recognizing that these were things that were happening in our communities and our homes that needed us to pay attention to. And we didn't have language for it, and people didn't have like ways to reference to what was happening. So if we were to think about all of that, and we were to think about also the fact that if we didn't even have the language, we of course we didn't have the tools.
Right.
If we don't have the language, we don't have the mechanisms to help people to then absolve themselves from PTSD or anxiety or depression. So can we give a space to the older generations to recognize that they didn't have what we have in this generation to actually heal? And in times, as I was writing my book, I also like reference to this as being like a generational privilege. We're so privileged that we get to have a podcast like this and that we could literally send a link to this episode to somebody that we love and they can be more well-versed in healing mechanisms, and they can start learning and hearing the fact that generational trauma is actually a thing, that there's a biological element to it. These are things that people before us did not have. And if we can hold a bit of grace for the fact that they didn't have the tools, so what they resorted to was silence. They resorted to was maybe drinking. Maybe it was something much more harmful, like hitting others, right? They had other coping mechanisms because they didn't have in place the healthy coping strategies to replace those bad ones.
Yeah. It makes me think, like, is ignorance ever bliss in this situation, right? Like a generation like ours that does have the tools, but we're kind of the first ones, right? I think about it kind of same thing with technology. Like, I remember growing up, like I was on the street playing Manhunt, like red light, green light, like all of these things, but I also know how to use one of these, right? So like, I think is there any level of ignorance is bliss to an extent to what you're sharing here?
There's a temporary ignorance is bliss.
Okay.
These things catch up to us. So these, it's like a patch up, like a Band-Aid, right? Like, yeah, you can ignore something. Some people actually masterfully, because the brain is just phenomenal and what it can do, they repress memories so far back that they can't access it ever again, right? But they may feel the remnants of the past. They may not remember what happened, but they'll feel it. And so that's the thing, is that if you want the next set of years, the next set of decades of your life to reflect not that restlessness, not those nightmares, not those whatever else that you have managed to just keep suppressed just enough so that you can survive through life, then we can't lean on ignorance as a forever tool. However, there are some therapies, some that I subscribe to, or just some techniques that do utilize that philosophy as a temporary fix. Like, for example, when a person's in crisis, when they're in a psychological crisis and they're like near hospitalization, right? Or they just, are just in a place where they're like, I need someone. We don't actually go directly into fix it mode. We go into distract your mind, do whatever else. And that is in a little bit of that ignorance is bliss in a very strategic, temporary way. And the reason why we do that is so that we can settle the emotions, bring them out of crisis. And then when we have the tools in place, we can revisit what happened there. Why were we in crisis? What drove us there?
Yeah.
We can't do it while in crisis. We can't say, oh, so let's get into the deepest, darkest trauma that you have now that you're in crisis. It's going to send a person down a black hole of no return, right? We don't want that. What we want is a settled mind, settled enough so that we can actually get into the intricacies of the past. But before we do that, we have to do a distracting method.
That's a strategy. That makes sense. Dr. Mariel, I could keep you here all day. I realize that I already have you here for an hour. So I'm only going to squeeze a couple more minutes out of you. I have never done this, but I'm going to do it with you. Almost 400 episodes in, I want to do a segment of finish this sentence. I'm going to start you off with 3 particular sentences, but I would love for you to finish it. First one, healing starts when?
We acknowledge that healing needs to take place. Acknowledgement.
So it's an awareness. Okay. Second, the hardest part of breaking cycles is?
How lonely it can feel.
Really? Why is it lonely to break a cycle? Is it because you're detaching yourself from maybe other people that have that cycle, or?
Yeah. And also sometimes you become the black sheep, you become the person that is uncovering all the secrets that everybody managed to keep hidden. You become a little bit of a pseudo enemy to some of the people around you that aren't ready for you to do the healing.
You just sent chills literally up my spine. We described the avatar of the show as a black sheep.
Wow. Yeah.
Someone that has just felt isolated, neglected, rejected, whatever that may look like. Not for any bad reason, but just because they've always felt different.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. You're saying that in particular will that ever stop us, do you think, from breaking a cycle?
It shouldn't. I hope that it doesn't. And I also like to remind folks that that's not the long-term result. It's a temporary experience, which is why it's important to note that it does happen, because people might feel it and they're like, you know what, I don't like this. I'm going to just go back to the old patterns. Why would I want to be so alone? But if we can frame it as a temporary experience that is a part of the process that won't be there forever, people are willing to go the next step in their healing process to really see it through.
Full circle moment. It's an in-between.
Yes.
Full circle moment right there. I love that. Last, finish the sentence. Pain becomes purpose when?
I love this one. It becomes purpose when it offers you the wisdom that you needed. I know that almost sounds a little bit cliche, but I really do mean it. I think that there is some facet of pain in the things that we go through that offer us wisdom so that we can step into the next journey. And from a psychological perspective, I know, resilience can be seen in different ways, but we actually need adversity because that actually strengthens us and makes us hardier and more wise for the next challenge.
Yeah. That's kind of why I asked that question earlier. It's like, should we seek it? Right? Should we seek it? But hey, Dr. Mariel, this was absolutely fantastic. I have one last question for you, but before that, where are you hanging out the most? I heard you say LinkedIn in the past. Are you still on LinkedIn more than Instagram?
I am mostly. I really enjoy the intellectual world of LinkedIn, so I tend to dive in there a little bit more than Instagram. But I am returning back to Instagram because I keep hearing from folks that they really want.
You're coming back.
Yeah, I'm coming back.
Come
People
back.
want those nuggets, of information.
Come back.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, hey, we'll put your LinkedIn, your Instagram in the show notes in the description of this. The book as well, we'll make sure is in there. Do you have a preferred destination for where we direct people? Is it your website, wherever books are sold? What's your thought?
Wherever books are sold. I also have a private practice that now is serving 42 states. So if people, are wanting to do that break the cycle journey with some guidance, there's also, that as a resource.
That's awesome. We will make sure all of those links are in there. Last question for you. And by the way, I just want to express gratitude while we're still here on air, super, super grateful for this. Appreciate you coming into the studio for this as well. I could talk to you literally for another 2 hours, but I know you have a flight to catch. If Dr. Mariel makes it to whatever year she wants to make it to, you help as many people break cycles, you get to watch and admire as many cranes as you want, whatever, you get to do all of the things. But when your name pops up in someone's mind, this individual could only remember you for one piece of advice. What's that advice you want to be remembered for?
That no matter what you've gone through, if you're willing to follow the path, healing is possible. When it comes to my work on generational trauma, when I start explaining what it is, people feel this deep heaviness and it's never going to go away. But the beauty of being a psychologist is that I actually get to see people fully transformed. It's such an honor. And it's been an honor for me, especially. I don't work with children really as much, but to see it in adolescents that, people, everybody just kind of gave up on, and they felt like they had no hope. And then all of a sudden you see this burgeoning, brilliant mind that really, kind of surfaced from all that darkness. Like that, all of that is enough for me to continue saying to folks, like, healing is possible, even if you've gone through decades of pain. So my hope is that people can hold on to that. They can hold on to the hope that they'll be able to see themselves in a different way at some point in their lives.
I love that. Dr. Mariel, you are fantastic. Thank you again for this. Books, websites, all of the things in the show notes in the description. But thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.